Who actually wins with money? I mean, it seems like a pretty obvious question, right? But what if I told you the answer that we've all been taught is completely and totally wrong? Let's get into it. Okay, so let's just dive right in. I want you to really genuinely think about this for a second. When you picture someone who's absolutely winning with their finances, who pops into your head? I bet for a lot of you, it's the high earner. You know, the doctor, the lawyer, the software engineer pulling in that huge six-figure salary. That's kind of the default answer, isn't it? Or maybe you're thinking of the hustler, that super high-powered professional, the one working 80-hour weeks, always closing the next big deal, always climbing that corporate ladder. You see the income, you see the grind. Or what about the Wall Street whiz kid, the investor who seems to have the Midas touch, turning every single stock they pick into pure gold? Surely that person has to be winning, right? Well, here's the kicker. The uncomfortable truth, most of them don't. In fact, for way too many of these high earners, that success is basically a house of cards, just one bad month away from tumbling down. And that brings us to our first major idea here, the great income lie. We have got to tear down this huge myth that we're all sold about how wealth is actually built. You know the formula, right? We've had it drilled into our heads since we were kids. Study hard, get a good job, earn more money, and then profit. You become rich. But see that question mark? That's the black hole where this entire plan just completely falls apart. Let me show you what I mean. A tale of two careers. On one hand, you've got an engineer earning a fantastic 120 grand a year. On the other, a small business owner making a more modest 65K. But fast forward 10 years. The high-earning engineer is stressed out, buried in debt from lifestyle upgrades. The business owner, they own assets, they control their own time, and they sleep just fine at night. How is that even possible? It's proof that a big income is not the answer. So, if it's not about how much you make, what is it about? Well, this leads us to the real divide, the absolute core conflict of this whole story. The difference between being an earner and being an owner. And see, here's the trap that almost everyone falls into. They just stop at earning. A raise comes in, so hey, the car gets an upgrade. Another bonus, time for a bigger house. It's this endless treadmill. You feel rich because your paycheck is getting bigger, but you aren't actually building anything that lasts. Your wealth is just an illusion tied to your job. So here it is. The secret. The big idea. Winners don't chase a bigger paycheck. They chase leverage. Leverage is what multiplies your efforts. Just think about it for a second. If the money completely stops the moment you stop working, you don't have any leverage. You're just a well-paid person on that treadmill. And leverage can look like a lot of different things. It could be actual ownership in a business. It could be developing skills that scale, things that make you money while you sleep. It's controlling your own time. Heck, it can even be using other people's money, like a mortgage on a rental property, to acquire an asset. This is the stuff that owners focus on. Let's make this even more real. Tale of two friends. Friend A, the earner, lands a $90,000 job and starts living it up. Friend B, the future owner, makes way less, 55K, but they're investing, buying assets. Now let's jump forward 15 years. Friend A is totally trapped, one layoff away from a full-blown panic. But friend B, they might not be jet-setting rich, but they are free. They have options. And that's the real win. All right. Now, this next part, this is where things might get a little personal. Because I'm sure you're thinking, okay, but I'm smart. I'm not going to fall for that. Well, there's a very specific, very sneaky trap set just for intelligent people. So what gives? Why do so many incredibly smart, talented people still end up losing the money game? It's not a failure of brains, I can tell you that. It's a total failure of behavior. Smart people, well, they often think their raw intellect can just outgame the simple rules. They overestimate their own brilliance and they dramatically underestimate the power of basic, consistent habits. They get lost trying to find the perfect, complex investment strategy, waiting for the one perfect move, while somebody else is just quietly, consistently building wealth in the background. This quote really just says it all. Money rewards discipline, not brilliance. The market does not care about your IQ score. Your credit card debt doesn't give a rip about your fancy degree. Simple, boring, repeated discipline will beat scattered brilliance every single time. But you want to know the number one wealth killer? The absolute biggest trap of them all? It's ego. The burning need to be seen as successful is the very thing that chains people to being poor. Buying stuff you don't need to impress people who, let's be honest, probably aren't even paying attention. It's a game you will never, ever win.
Okay, so we've smashed all the myths. Let's start building up the solution. Let's get to the good part, the real winner's playbook, the actual strategy for how you win this thing.
We'll call it the freedom formula. And look, I'm going to be real with you. It's not exciting. It's not sexy. It is aggressively delaying gratification. It's building up your asset base before you even think about upgrading your lifestyle. It's consciously opting out of the status games. And it's making these same simple, boring, correct financial decisions over and over again for decades. Because the real goal here isn't to look rich. It's not about being flashy. It's about being untouchable. It's about building a financial foundation so solid that a bad boss, a lost job, a crazy market downturn, none of it can actually take you out. It's about real, unshakable security. So let's circle all the way back to that very first question. Who actually wins with money? Well, now we know. It's not the person with the highest IQ. And it's definitely not just the person putting in the most hours at the office. The winner is simply the one who understands that this isn't a sprint to a new car. It's a marathon. They win because they're playing a much, much longer game than everybody else around them. And look, if any part of this conversation made you feel a little uncomfortable, good. Seriously, that little bit of discomfort, that's usually the first sign that you're on the path to real clarity and eventually to making a real change.